Welcome to day 22 of our 30 days of PM series where we discuss topics around product management and learn things a product manager does when building products and scaling and maturing their product within their organization. Uh, I'm Shagun from The Nonsense, and we talk about product management skills, product management frameworks, and things a product manager does. The topic for us for discussion today is around hypothesis and testing hypothesis when building products, right? Why do you need this, and where does this come into play? Essentially, it comes into play when you have at least a PMF available for your product, right? And you're scaling and growing, and you have requests from multiple customers for a specific request to be handled, but you have your own hypothesis of how you need to probably attempt or solve for the particular problem or look for solutions for that, right? So this is where hypothesis based testing or development comes into play, where essentially you have an assumption. So you feel like a specific request that came from customer A can actually be resolved by an existing functionality available within the platform, right? So how do you test this out? Probably this is one of those features where adding an enhancement specific to this user will solve their use case and complete their entire workflow, but is really counterintuitive or counterproductive to other user personas and other users who use the platform, right? So a lot of the times now you have this hypothesis on how a specific feature can downgrade or degrade performance or productivity when using your platform, right? So now how do you test this hypothesis, right? You can't really just do things in random. You could do an A/B testing, which can help you validate your hypothesis, which is also a great way, which we learned about yesterday, on how you essentially using A/B testing solve and come to a conclusion based on based on the hypothesis that you have in mind, right? But primarily, if we do a recap of what A/B testing talks about, is essentially having a goal in mind that you want to achieve. A/B tests are mostly done to figure out ways to achieve a target metric or target goal, whereas hypothesis based testing is validating your assumptions and getting data points together that can help you validate or suggest alternatives or in favor for a specific assumption that you have made, right? But in case of A/B testing, you can also make clarifying this assumption as a goal and have a metric tied to it, where you have, for example, assumptions made, which is you define the assumption, you tell if this assumption is satisfied, you will see X return, and will will lead to Y behavior in customers and can be validated through Z metric, right? So you have an assumption, you have the scenario on how things will play out if an assumption is actually true, and how do you actually validate this assumption, right? Or mark it to be actually successful as a thought experiment or as a experiment via A/B testing. So using that, you can make decisions on whether the hypothesis or the goal that you were trying to achieve did really achieve or not. If it did, you can it's because of a validation criteria being met that you set up for the goal that you introduced, and then define the approach to solve for it and build and improve your product from there on, right? So we saw examples yesterday about how the same section of an application can be driven towards engagement and sharing, while at the other end can also be used to build proof of work or word of mouth, right? For users using your existing applications to help increase the sign up and also increase organic growth to the product, right? And helps you validate, are users really willing to share or share this insightful tool that they discovered, right? So this essentially is how you deal with A/B testing and hypothesis based testing, where you have an assumption, a criteria, or a goal to meet. You build your hypothesis around it. You build the validation criteria that can essentially make the decision to be successful, or the validation actually being labeled or marked as true. Perform A/B testing on series of user, validate details from there, repeat it with mix or match the data models and data inputs from the same source and also from multiple sources, and then look at data, manage, review the details, and then take a call, right? A lot of times this happens when when your product is mature, uh, at least having hit PMF and have had a few customers onboarded, where you are now looking towards the next growth lever that can be pulled, such that growth for the product keeps growing, and your product keeps growing as a result of that, right? So this is more at after a PMF, some validation already being happened and some customer adoption already being received for the product. Whereas in the case of A/B testing, any sort of testing to begin with, you will always be testing with your customers. There is never a point where you stop testing or stop interacting with your customers. As you scale and grow, a lot of times the PM job becomes more crucial and more important as your organization grows, because as the scale of the organization grows, as the product matures, the decisions you need to make should become even more data backed, right? You have to have data backing your assumption and your reasonings, and then taking calls, where not all the time you can talk to customers or have inputs from them, but have to preempt or understand what the user is actually looking for based on the growth of the product and the state at which the customer or the user is, right? And take calls, take decisions, and build these hypotheses and goals to track and validate these through these A/B testing and hypothesis based testing, in essence. But yeah, looking at the article from today that we received, it's essentially understanding what is the change that you're trying to achieve. So this is more on defining the goal and what you're trying to do. What's the change actually? What is the impact related to the change? Who is it targeted towards? And how much can it help grow or grow a certain metric? And how, after how long will you start seeing results, right? And you can put this into a simple statement where design X will increase conversions for search campaign by X% after a specific day, after 7 days, for example, right? So here in one statement you have defined the whole hypothesis as to, firstly, what you are trying to do, why you are trying to do it, who is it for, and how what is the time you can start seeing results. And because you have also time bound this activity, once you start running the hypothesis over the time period, you can validate if the metric or the criteria that you targeted it to achieve did really, I mean, get to or not, right? If it did not, it's probably your hypothesis is wrong, or you didn't have like a larger sample size or large enough a time period to make decisions. But an hypothesis is essentially building up statements on reasoning of why something needs to be built. If it needs to build, who is it being built for, what is in it for them, and how, and then when will you start seeing growth or results of this hypothesis being actually valid and successful, and time bounding the whole activity, right? So this is how great hypotheses are written. Once a hypothesis is written, you can define these goals and test on these, right? A lot of the times these can just be from talking to customers and looking at competitors and researching about the market in general, right? And talking to other partners that you have within the organization, or referring to resources online. You can always reach out, I mean, always look at chatter online. You can also reach out to these research firms which are specific to your category or industry that you're dealing with, and get research analysis from them being done, right? So you have the likes of Gartner, Forrester, and all of these organizations that generate reports and build quadrants on who are the leaders, uh, who are competitors, who are essentially leading the whole space, in essence, who are the innovators within the space, and who have great competition coming up, and who is the most mature and advanced when it comes to offering of their related to their product. So there are multiple sources online. You can obviously always talk to your existing customers and look for their opinion and what they think about it, but always take, as we have discussed, take their inputs with a pinch of salt. And a lot of the times the type of output or response you receive depends on the way the question is being framed or the conversation is being taken care, or who is managing the conversation in general, right? So this is how you can build and test these hypotheses, which are essentially a series of assumptions that you have that you want to validate based and putting it under a specific condition for validation, and then predicting the impact over a time period, and then actually running through the test and validating if all the steps and all the assumptions that you thought did come true or not. Take what came true, see if does it really make sense to build a solution or not, and if yes, you can then prioritize on the solutioning and working with the customers on product discovery, product design, and the whole process of writing and building requirements for your eventually engineering team to take up and build for, right? So this is how product hypotheses are done. A lot of time these assumptions become more vague the more complex or the bigger the product becomes. A lot of the times statements can be very open ended, and you have to then narrow it down to a specific scope, specific area, build assumption around it, validate the data, validate your assumptions backed by data, and creating success metrics and criteria for it to be marked as a successful assumption or not. And if yes, you then iterate and improve on either enhancing your existing platform or building something from scratch if the impact that you uh, I mean assumed earlier on is actually met from your hypothesis and through your A/B testing and so on and so forth, right? So this is about a great way to test your ideas and test your reasoning as to why one feature needs to be prioritized over the other, and if it needs to be, what are some data items I can back this decision by, right? A lot of the time the decisions can be backed by either priority or the business goals that needed to be achieved, but it a lot of times also comes from just talking to customers and figuring out their workflow and improving and helping them improve their workflow through your product and the features that you're trying to build for. But yeah, how do you do this hypothesis as testing? I mean, I think we have discussed more or less all the steps that are here, but to cover, the first step is to think of challenges that you're currently facing, right? You probably are seeing uh, a drop off on certain pages. You don't really see a lot of conversion rate happening, or don't really see adoption to a specific feature, even though it's very visible and I mean to all users work I mean using your platform. So you have these assumptions and you have written then these challenges down, and then you build statements to test your hypothesis or define your hypothesis, right? So if it is about drop off rates being increased over like the last 30 days or so, you can build an hypothesis that I feel like our website does not really handle traffic well when it comes to catering to the audience that we deal with, which is primarily the west coast side of things. And you and the way to validate this is uh, we should we should do X and Y changes to the website design and optimize our hosting services and domain services and add search capability. And what is the criteria for validating this? That you start seeing increased retention rate, increased engagement rate, growth in that over 5% over like a 30 period timeline. So I had an assumption, I built the reasoning of how it can be solved and what needs to be done, and then built criteria on once this is delivered, you start the counter and validate for the X number of days you defined it for, and see if the metric actually grows or not. If it grows, great, your assumption is validated, and now you can build the solution and make it available for all customers. If not, you go back to the drawing board and build solutions and look at options of solving for the problem. So yeah, you test your hypothesis after building the statements, and if it creates impact, go ahead, great. And if not, ask yourself another follow-up questions, right? Are you solving the right problem? Are these the right users you are talking to, and if and the data that you have is really right or not, right? So, and if there are alternatives to implementing something. So this gives you clarity after actually validating and talking to your customers and looking at data, instead of just making gut decisions. You will have to sometimes also make gut decisions, but you always have to make them in the scenario of always betting on them. It really shouldn't be like the core product offering that you're trying to bet on and make gut decisions for, which really wouldn't help over the long run, because it might stick, but it might also go down south very quickly, and you will not really have the time to get things together and sort things out. So it's always helpful to make small assumptions, small bets on your product, and if it and which doesn't really have a lot of harm but becomes a learning experience for you to understand your customers and users better. Now, so always keep in mind, take wise decisions. Don't really I mean just build on hypothesis. It's a great practice to validate your hypothesis, build the statements and test it with actual users who will eventually be using your product, right? So this has been about hypothesis testing and how you can build those. I have a few resources from the article that was here, which I'll link below, which essentially talks about the product development and product discovery process and how you can build features for them and also validate these through the hypothesis testing and also the A/B testing for different user segments and different user personas, and get feedback, iterate and improve your product in the next phase of things when things are being moved or changed and updated, right? So that's all about hypothesis testing for today. We'll see you guys tomorrow, another day, another topic to discuss around product management and what a product manager does. Yeah. So this has been a great learning experience over the last 22 days or so. We've tackled multiple problems, but I also feel like there are a plethora of topics that just got repeated. Design thinking probably got discussed twice in, at least four times. A/B testing already, and testing your hypothesis, MVP, validation of your ideas probably just got discussed another 4 or 5 times. But it's a great revision exercise where things are ideally just skewed and morphed into something else, even though the eventual goal is to achieve or build a good product that your customers actually use. But the problem for us to solve through these series is learn and share information around product management and product development and building startups and scaling your products for the next million users, right? So that's been it. Talk to you soon. Talk to you tomorrow on another topic related to project management. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.